welcome to the Filmmaker Lounge, the digital bootcamp edition. If you've been to one of our previous Filmmaker Lounges in 2020, hello, lovely to see you again. If you haven't, then I shall explain. The Filmmaker Lounge is a partnership collaboration between Festival Formula and Film Festival Alliance, and we wanted to create a space online where people could access, whether they be filmmaker or festival, to learn about each other's roles and their part in the process, because without films we can't have festivals, without festivals they need films. So I'm Katie McCullough and I'm going to be your host as usual for the Filmmaker Lounge, and this is the first of 4 monthly editions that we've curated to take you through the journey of preparing for the film festival circuit, from stepping on to the circuit at the beginning through to what you do with your film festival, with your film post-festival life. I do recommend signing up for the remaining 3 as well. They are kind of part of a package. We've got some amazing, fantastic guests speaking for all of them, and I'll be announcing our next month's special guests at the end of this session, so kind of stay tuned. Today we are starting at the beginning of a festival journey, which is the programming and submission stage. So I'm going to get our lovely guests to introduce themselves briefly and mention the festival they're working with presently, but also what other festivals they have worked with in the past or are going to be in the future. And if you have any questions, then please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom. But also the chat function is open for you to kind of make any comments or kind of say where you're tuning in from as well. So Faridah, I'm going to throw to you, if you don't mind, first to kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Faridah Gbadamosi. I'm sure you were all trying to figure out how to say my last name. And I am from the US. I'm in New York. And I'm currently, I just wrapped up my time at Athena Film Festival. Yesterday was our last day. We turned what is normally a 5-day festival into a month-long virtual festival. And that was very exciting. I also am at Outfest Fusion, which will be happening in 2 weeks. So I'm quite busy. And I've worked many other festivals. I've worked at Mill Valley Film Festival. I've screened for Tribeca. I've programmed at Cascadia. I'm director of programming at a festival called Coven Film Festival. And we're doing kind of a series of films, this year to kind of in the virtual space. So I've been around. I've worked a lot of festivals. I actually did the math. I also do operations of festivals. I did the math. I've worked at over 40 different festivals in the last decade. So it's been, or worked at or around in conjunction with. So I have a lot of institutional knowledge of random festivals. That's the
best kind of knowledge, fantastic. Sean, do you want to come and introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Sean McGovern. I'm the head of programming / creative director, moving from one title to another, of Gaze in Ireland. And Gaze is Ireland's premier national LGBT film festival. And it's been running for 29 years this year. And next year's our big 30th birthday. And Gaze has been running since 1991, but homosexuality has only been decriminalized in Ireland since 1993. So we are, we're trailblazers, and we've gone from a kind of grassroots festival to Arts Council funded, and in the two biggest kind of commercial art house cinemas in Dublin. It's a big part of the calendar. Apart from Gaze, my work is I've also worked in production for BFI Flare. I've done shorts for the London Film Festival. I programmed independently at London Cinema Museum. I can't wait to do that again when everything's reopened. And probably the most influential was I was part of the extended Fringe Queer Film and Arts Fest, which is the best festival in London.
Fighting talk, I like it. Leslie, how about yourself?
Hi everybody. I direct the Ann Arbor Film Festival. We are we had our 59th, which concluded yesterday. We are the longest running experimental and avant-garde film festival in North America. My background is a bit different. I actually came out of 14 years of teaching and started directing the film festival. I sort of came in a side door because I'd been involved with Ann Arbor Film Festival, well, since probably the 30th was when I first learned of it, and went to the office. It was in the back of Vicky's Wash and Wear Haircuts, and I just came in, introduced myself. I had been studying film in college and had heard about the festival while away, and I came back and I said, "Hey, you need any help?" And the director gave me a stack of posters and said, "Hey, go put these up." And then over the years, I've volunteered in many, many different roles and showed my work in the festival and many, many, many things. And then they were looking for a director about eight or so years ago, and here I am.
Oh, fantastic. The thing that I love about doing any talk like this is, I live and breathe researching festivals for filmmakers. And obviously, we're very bespoke to the films we look after. So we're pulling out those assets and finding those festivals where the audiences are. And I absolutely love being able to put a massively different collection of festivals in one room to just kind of say to filmmakers, there are so many festivals out there and they all have their different remits or their different focuses. But sometimes, filmmakers don't know about these festivals because, it's not in their territory, it's not in their field. So this is why I love doing these kind of talks. And even better is that it's just nice for filmmakers to be able to ask questions that maybe they don't have access to begin with. So we have had some questions sent in from people who are kind of signed up watching. And I've also kind of, I'm going to keep an eye on some of the fresh ones that are coming through as well, so I can already see one that's been popped in there. But I've also thrown in some popular myths because I think it's important that whilst all of us independently and individually can kind of say to a filmmaker, that's rubbish, it doesn't happen like this, or so on, I think it's really beneficial to kind of be in a collective group and kind of actively acknowledge that some of these myths are myths for a really good reason. It's the same as any teacher will tell you. The reason they get specialists in is because the students don't listen to the teacher, but they'll listen to an outside voice. So that's kind of my ethos with that. So I thought we would start with one that's a little bit more kind of vague in terms of like submissions, but more about your roles as kind of programming and with the selections in mind, which is, how do you describe the role of programming to somebody who doesn't know what that is? And anyone can jump in with these questions, or if you're too quiet, I will pick on you. So who wants to go first?
Not me.
Oh, then I can go first. I thought Sean was making a face like Sean wouldn't go first. I've had to describe what I do for a living to many people because none of my family seems to understand what I do. So, I mean, I tend to say I curate because people seem to understand the word curate better than they like the word programmer. Programmer, even if you look up the job, you'll get a lot of tech jobs, which I can't do. So, so it's a lot of curation. The way I see it is, I describe it as I work for a festival, figure out what their audience likes to see or would want to see, and then try to choose films based on that. Films that help them see the world in a different way, or films that have really interesting voices. Each festival has its own flavor. But essentially, I try to find the films that would best serve that space. And that involves many, many hours of watching things. A lot of those things are not things I enjoy because everyone also thinks, oh, you get paid to watch movies. And I've worked at many different festivals, and like not all the content is like fun content. Actually, a lot of stuff that ends up at film festivals are not fun content. So it's a lot of watching, but it's not like all the most, I'm very blessed and I feel very lucky to have this role, but it's not all like sitting in a room watching all really lovely content and like 15 hours of Minari is not really what happens. But it's still really cool, I guess.
I think that's a good insight. I mean, you kind of tapped into the fact that it's not all kind of like, sweets and roses, which is good. Sean or Leslie, do you have anything to add in terms of like how you describe the role of programming?
Sure. With our film festival, because we are quite old, and we have good name recognition out there in the world. We're an Academy Award qualifying festival. I think we get a lot of submissions. I would say typically about 3,000 each year. So we have a very robust review process, which involves probably nearly 100 volunteer screeners. And we have a series of rounds things go through. Every film that comes through our door gets seen by 2 different people in round 1 to begin with. And we do insist that all of the films go through the same process. We don't sort of invite or cherry pick or say, no, you don't have to, go through the review process. We just want to treat everybody the same. And we have different scoring criteria, categories we're looking at, and we're asking people to comment. So things like the artistic vision, the technical execution, for us, how innovative is the film, and then how compelling. And we just added a new category this year for sound design to help people pay attention to that whole aspect. And really in round 1, what we're asking our volunteers to look for, they're pretty much scouting for films that fit the Ann Arbor Film Festival kind of aesthetic and range. And we're looking for really artist-made work that oftentimes experiments with the medium, tells different stories, is really coming from much more of a fine arts kind of perspective. And then, that group of viewers in round 1, the requirement is that they've attended our festival so they understand what we're looking for. And we have a lot of different systems where we want to help educate them, give them an opportunity to, talk with us, talk with each other, and grow their skills in observing and articulating what they're seeing. And then, in terms of round 2 and 3 and so on, that's people who typically teach film, experimental or art film or video, are makers themselves, or maybe they've been screening with us for a half a dozen or more years. And then what we're trying to do is by round 4, get it down to about 200 films. And then from there, I'm the one who takes a look at what's there and start to put them together, group them together into programs.
Okay, so you've actually touched on quite a few bits of what other people have questions about, which I think would be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast with the other festivals. Sean, what about you, the role of programmer? Obviously you're kind of programmer, director, creative, kind of hovering around a few of those different roles. So what's the description of the role of programmer mean for you?
Well, I want to thank Faridah for explaining it so succinctly at the start, and to Leslie for giving such an insight into how things are done in Ann Arbor. You can think every festival is a little bit different, and I think queer film festivals have a little bit of a different kind of pressure put on them, in the sense that if you're part of a kind of a film festival from a region or place, or your name is the location of where the film festival takes place, you have a different kind of artistic scope of which you're able to and avenues you're able to go down. And there are many different artistic avenues and scopes that I do the same as everybody else does in a film festival. The only thing is that you are working to try and have the audience feel that they are represented both in the audience and on the screen, but also you don't want to always represent what's in the people in the audience, because then you get a very specific kind of film. So what you want, so my job is to I think it's to please, to provoke, to entertain, in terms of the audience, but also in terms of the sport, supporting the filmmakers, is to create a great geographical spread, different types, narrative, documentary, experimental, different ways of seeing things, and to present them in a way where if somebody who's not au fait with queer film walked into a shorts program in particular, because I think that's, shorts are where you get to have the most artistic, it takes the longest to do, but you get the most artistic license, I think. And shorts programs tend not to replicate themselves from film festival to film festival. I think that if someone walked into a shorts program screening and sat down, would be like, wow, the quality and the scope and scale of the stories you're putting out there are pretty incredible. And that's what you try to do. So it's amplifying the filmmakers' voices, the art, the regions, and pleasing the audience at the same time. And you can never do all of that. And I think you should just accept it. And you can try and do it in a different way the next year. But yeah, that's kind of how we try and do things.
That's great. I do feel like please and provoke should be a t-shirt slogan now, actually. I mean, you've actually kind of slightly touched on this in your previous answer, Leslie, which I'd like to kind of hear from Faridah and Sean about it, about what is your process at the festival. You know, a lot of filmmakers kind of, they take their film to the door and then that's it. They kind of don't get to see what's behind it. So we do have a question, which is, what is the process at your festival? Is it lots of people watching everything, or is it small amounts of people looking at different sections? Of course, if you have, you know, features and shorts or specific categories. So, I mean, Faridah, you're obviously kind of straddling lots of different festivals. So maybe should we highlight Athena just because it's just happened and then it's probably fresh in your mind, even though you've got another festival coming up. But how does the selection process work at Athena?
So we, like most festivals, have like a call for films, of course. So like Athena doesn't quite get the same number as Ann Arbor, but we get a lot of submissions and then we watch that. We also have a team of screeners, volunteer screeners, and they watch some of the films, and of course the programming team, which was 3 of us, 3 to 4 of us, watch some of the films as well. And then if a volunteer screener, like multiple people will watch a film, essentially. That is the kind of the way that we move forward with the films. We have shorts and then we have features. And that's kind of the only split for Athena. Athena Film Festival, I realized I didn't explain what the festival is. Athena Film Festival is a film festival that has, where all the films are films with women in leadership roles. Like are either like the main, the film is centered on their stories. So that changes what sort of content we get in. And of course, then we try to show the full spectrum of the ways in which you can show women's leadership on screen. So like that is kind of the focus of the festival. So we're just kind of watching the films, and then the selection process kind of just goes, we're very collaborative programming team. So we kind of just like discuss the films with one another. We have programming meetings in which we have conversations about films we've seen, not seen, ones we recommend to one another, which I mean, I really enjoy. I've been in other spaces where you have complete autonomy over a section. But I really enjoy kind of like the collaborative space where you're kind of like chatting with other people about what films, and then it kind of is a consensus kind of to decide what sort of films will be at the festival and won't.
I think it's so interesting for filmmakers to hear that I mean, and it's something that we've probably all said, you know, even twice during this already. Every festival has its own flavor and its own taste and its own audience, but also its own process. So, you know, some of the smaller festivals, it's literally 6 people in a room watching everything and arguing. And then with others, it's a little bit more like rounds and having prescriptive, like, you know, mark this out of 10 for cinematography and execution of story and acting. Sean, how big's the team at Gaze and what's the process there?
It's incredibly small, I should say. And what we're doing now, because my tenureship, we began last year, but last year was not the year for changes of how we program things. Our last year was about putting on a festival. I'm sure Leslie and Faridah understand, against the odds, which is what we did. So we have a board of directors who are working to kind of both restructure and future-proof the festival. And what we're currently doing now is, and everybody is paid, there's no volunteers at Gaze, which is a good thing, and has its challenges as well, because when you're a volunteer festival, and I have been part of volunteer festivals and loved it, and that's where I learned, that's where I cut my teeth. You kind of get a muck in quality that kind of everyone kind of contributes, and in a festival where everyone is paid for the contribution, that's great, but you only have so much money and it only goes so far. So what we're doing this year is, because we're planning for a smaller festival for 21 with a big thing for our 30th birthday next year, what I'm doing is I'm recruiting a kind of a programming intern, somebody who may have a background in film studies or is even a fan of the festival. And we've received quite a lot of applications with kind of a writing exercise. And that person is going to help me program, but also I'm going to kind of teach them how film festivals work and operate, and either they will repeat that the year after, or I'm not quite sure if this is going to happen yet, but we'll be recruiting more people next year. So the plan is that I'm going to give a little bit of a taste, a kind of a taste to everybody who wants to contribute to the programming of the festival, who can bring something distinctive and can contribute, but also shape the direction of the festival in ways that wouldn't happen if it was just, say, solely me doing it. But of course, I have some of the board members also volunteer from their perspective. With their, obviously, as lovers of film, they bring their own perspectives on things. But we want to be able to tell people how to program, because I think lots of people, as Faridah said, it's not watching great films one after the other, day after day. Woohoo! There's an awful lot of there's an awful lot of learning, kind of a critical analysis in terms of where something's going to fit into a program. And I just want to be able to give enough people the understanding of how that happens and give them the skills for when they, get a bigger role at Gaze or they move on to bigger festivals. So we're trying to increase the diversity and the plurality of voices and pay them in the process.
This is great. It all sounds exciting. Every so often I kind of get asked if I want to be a festival director or a programmer, because I've been 16 years kind of the other side of things, telling people about it. I think I panic at the idea because I'm terrible at picking my favorite things. So I'd be terrible at trying to curate a festival. So it's a job you earn your stripes at. That's what I say. So I kind of salute you all for that. Somebody has commented, Amy Starbin has said, I want a please and provoke t-shirt. So it means like we have to get them done now. So I also have another question, which is a little bit more of a logistical question about kind of how you view things. So somebody's asked, how do you watch submissions? Are you watching it on a big screen, or are you watching it on a computer? Are you watching it in big stints, or are you doing it kind of as they come in, or at the end of when all the deadlines have shut? So I don't know if anyone wants to shine a light on their kind of way of watching content.
I'm gonna just say quickly, no one watches all the films after the deadlines. That would not work. You would never be able to program anything. You kind of watch as they come in. And of course, the large mass comes, of course, the late deadline, because human beings. But like there's a constant watching that goes through the entire process from the minute submissions open. So I always suggest like submitting the cut to filmmakers. Always submit the cut that you would want to show. Most people will say you can submit another cut, but like always never submit a film unless that is a version you would be comfortable with airing, is kind of my thing, because is constant watching. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your film being good or not good. It's just they already saw a really great road movie. And then your road movie came later. So like submit as early as you can, because it's kind of your program as you go. What was the other part? Oh, and the selection process. In terms of watching, it depends. Like I would love to say that I watch everything on a big TV, but I also like move around a bit. So I don't always have a big TV available to me. There is a lot of screen watching, a lot of on my computer watching. So like keeping that in mind when you're submitting your film. But yeah, I guess that's my answer. I just I watch wherever is available, and I'm watching in groups, watching whenever I can. You some people are better at this than I am, but they like schedule time in their day for their watching. I applaud those organized people. I tend to just watch in groups, and then whenever I have a nice little chunk of time.
Perfect. And I completely agree with you about kind of submitting a cut that you feel comfortable with, because I think filmmakers can sometimes get so FOMO about those kind of deadlines that they kind of jump the gun a bit, and we kind of have to say like you need to be able to be happy and confident that what you're showing tells a story that you want to tell, and to not kind of be hoodwinked by deadlines. Sean or Leslie, what's the process for you in terms of like how you watch content?
Unfortunately, not on as big a screen as I would like. However, I think maybe Leslie and Faridah and any film programmers who are here, you know when something is cinematic and you're watching out for things to be cinematic. And I know in the last year, we probably, all the film festivals were probably on screens that were too small for what they should have, what they deserved. But you can tell when something is going to look amazing on the cinema screen, and you feel very vindicated when you walk into that screening, and it is amazing. And that's what we're looking for. We are film festivals, and we believe in the collective viewing experience. And yes, I know that funky aspect ratios are all really in right now, but sometimes you want something as wide as possible.
Use all the screen real estate possible. Yeah. Well, so I do watch projected on a large screen, and because my role with Ann Arbor Film Festival is more than just programming. Since I direct the festival, I do development and all the other things, personnel, so on and so forth. We're a pretty small organization. When submission season is open, I participate, in all rounds, just as a regular screener. So I typically watch some films every night, most nights. I find it super enjoyable. It's always exciting to see what's coming in the door. It's very inspiring, just to see the level of creativity that is happening. And then when it comes to the season where everything's really been reviewed by our screening community, and it's time to program, well, it just so happens that falls right around the holiday season in December. And I've only been programming our festival, well, I think this is the third year. I've been with Ann Arbor for maybe about 8 years. And there was a year when our program director got recruited away to go run an arts organization in Detroit and give out a lot of grant money, and that was all great, for the community and for her. But for us, the timing was just a little tight to find a new programmer. So because it is in my wheelhouse, I'll just do it. And I did it over, the time that, normally people would go off on holiday, but it gave me, a 2-week period to really focus. And, you want to be able to keep all of that work in your mind, and I'm looking at that, like I said, that round 4 where we're trying to get it down to about 200. And we program, well, let's say this year we had 15 shorts and competition programs of, probably about 110 films. And then there were 11 features this year. So, you kind of need to kind of keep those in your mind as you're trying to put the puzzle together. Yeah. So it's kind of, I feel like it's an added thing on my plate, but it's so enjoyable. Like it really increases the quality of my involvement because I'm that closely attuned with the work.
It's definitely, I mean, again, I just love how everybody's approach is so different, and also just that kind of appreciation, like when you do see a film that just kind of sticks in your brain, that you just go, yes, this is what, it's taken me this long to get this one, but it's brilliant. I have a question which I'm either going to get like the biggest collective eye roll from all of you, or hopefully you just don't slam the screen shut and walk off. How much of a film's acceptance is based on knowing someone at the festival?
Oh, can I get in on this?
I definitely did the eye roll. I'm so sorry.
I think this is a very interesting question, because when someone has submitted a film, the initial feeling that I have is dread. Because I think the majority of us, I would say everybody actually, every programmer that I know takes it takes the process very seriously. And you really hope that what this person has submitted is actually amazing and it can find a place. But normally what you have to do is maybe say to them, I'm sorry we didn't select your film. Yeah, it really shouldn't and doesn't make that much of an impact. However, the one difference is, though, if somebody is an alumni filmmaker, you've chosen to screen their work before, you will pay attention to what they've submitted, or you will see their name in the Film Freeway platform, and you'll think, oh, this could be interesting. And you know, they might still get the same automated message saying that they weren't selected, or you might send them an email in advance and say, listen, you know, I thought it was really good, but you know, it just didn't work this year. I think maybe Leslie and Faridah will agree is that sometimes we don't select something, it really comes down to this most generic excuse, but it's a programming decision. It's like, if you're putting something in context of the films that are before, regardless if it's a short or feature, we're looking at days, we're looking at schedules, timetables, we're looking at something in regard to what's before and after it, and where it fits on a day and where it fits on a night, and what's the overall content. And in a shorts program, it's even more clear, because you have limited space and you have your subsequent films, and you have attention spans and run times and all these kind of things. So really, actually, I think if you know someone in a film festival, it can actually be a hindrance. And if you're submitting, you shouldn't tell them. Or like, it should be like someone else could submit the movie, like when you see the name, so you won't know anything, and then when it comes up, you're like, oh yeah, this person.
I'm so glad that you're sharing this, like, and I know that Faridah and Leslie, you're going to have some amazing nuggets about this as well, because this is kind of the stuff I want filmmakers to hear. I want them to kind of say, like, these are 3 programmers from 3 very different festivals saying the same thing. So please enlighten us more, Faridah and Leslie. Faridah, you look like you're like itching to kind of.
Oh, no. I was just, it's such a valid question, because I get asked that often.
Yeah.
And that the eye roll wasn't because the questions, it's just like, it's one of those moments where it's just like, it's actually terrifying. Like you see your friend's name and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna pass this to another screener. Like, it's just, because you don't want to be, because you have to be a person, you have to be hyper vigilant, because you know that if that person does get in, the question will be asked. So the film has to be great, essentially. And then it feels like, and you don't want to be unfair to that film because of that. But you also recognize that is a question people frequently have. I saw a friend's film and I was just like, God, I really hope this is good. And thankfully it was. I was like, I went into it and I knew the entire film crew. Like, they were all my buddies. And I was just like, this is not gonna be fun for me at all. And then it all turned out to be, it all worked out in the end, but it was kind of like one of those things where it's just harder. I will also add that, like, the act of knowing someone varies. So if it's as some people call them friends, a festival alumni, as you mentioned, or someone whose work that you have tried to program at a space before, that's a level of knowing. And that happens where it's just like, of this person's work, so you want to see what their next piece of work was. Or it's a film that couldn't quite fit before, because of whatever reason, but they made another one and you're like, I would like to see this because this is a person's work that I think fits the festival well. That happens. And people tend to translate that to the same thing as, oh, they know this person. I'm like, no, you've been following their work because you think it's a good fit for the space. But like, if like my brother, I have many of those, decided to make a movie, it would just be really hard. I would try to, and that also tends to happen when a film comes in from someone. If the filmmaking team, if the programming team is large enough, they will pass it on to someone else to just belay any feelings about favoritism, largely because they do recognize like the optics of it all.
They definitely, yeah. And Leslie, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, I concur with all of that. I do. On all counts, it's one thing that does come to mind is, yes, similarly, we do keep an eye out for the work by our alumni. You know, those are relationships that we've been growing and developing for many years. But at the same time, you know, it's just there are only so many slots. You know, there are only so many minutes that we can, you know, put things on the screen, and it's heartbreaking, you know, when there are really excellent films, but there just isn't enough time. And sometimes it really does come down to, as my colleagues were saying, you know, it's what's coming before, what's coming after, how does it fit within a program, how is it in conversation with the other works. um, with our festival, I think since the beginning, we've tried to have a kind of a light curator's touch, just in terms of, you know, the style is very free form. We want to have, you know, an array of genres and geographies in each program. And we don't really want to give a theme or anything. We're always wanting to give it over to the audience to let them see. You know, we don't want to lead them in any way. But when those films in the final round are starting to come together, and I'm looking at arranging them, I might find some similarities. Well, it's like when you're a DJ, you know, you put this song next to that one because there is a relationship. It's not just, you know, two clashing songs. So I would say that, you know, I and my many of my predecessors kind of have taken that angle on programming in Ann Arbor Film Festival. And yeah, it's hard, you know. Like I said, there's so much good work out there, and at the end of the day, we just can't put it all in. And and it doesn't have anything to do with who do I know and who knows me.
I think that's the hardest thing for filmmakers, and I we kind of handle filmmakers all day, every day, and I think the hardest thing is that lack of guarantee. And I think, you know, some filmmakers can try and cling to something because it is some kind of guarantee. There is, you know, the circuit is so unpredictable in terms of who likes your film, who can fit it into their program, and, you know, where it's going to play first and where it's going to play on its very last kind of festival leg. And I think, you know, that kind of myth stems from the fact, well, you know, there's a way of getting your film played, and it's about knowing someone, which in actual fact, as you've all attested, is not the case, because sometimes that can be detrimental because the film might not be good. You know, it's very hard for filmmakers. I completely hear them, but I'm kind of, you know, again, just to reiterate, the reason we do these talks is so filmmakers and other festivals can kind of hear like what other people have to say, but also to kind of hopefully nip some of these kind of ideas in the bud and actually kind of say, you know, not everyone does it like that. This is slightly kind of linked in terms of like a follow-on question. And I think, Leslie, you mentioned this earlier about kind of, you know, taking from just open submissions. So the question is, do you pre-curate some of your program, or are all selections from open submissions? Now, I'm just going to add a caveat to the person that asked this question. Sometimes when the festival has a feature section, there is a little bit more kind of pre-curation there, maybe for like an opening film or a closing film, or if there's a premiere kind of stipulation involved. But if we just focus on the festivals that we have here and just kind of here, so do you pre-curate, or is it purely from open submissions for the festival? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Features, it's a you do call them in, you know, especially in the kind of film festival that we produce. A lot of our titles, primarily, like a lot of our biggest titles, would come from Berlin and from BFI Flare, but only a certain amount, and we rely on features to also come in through open submissions. But all shorts are programmed through open submissions. And actually, I want to say one thing as well, before I forget. Every time a short filmmaker, any filmmaker, pays a submission fee for a festival, they are keeping that festival going, and they are paying for us to help put on other people's work. So I am eternally grateful. This is why I love shorts panels and short programs, and they take a lot of time and curation to put together, but they are the backbone of the festival, and the filmmakers are part of that backbone as well, and we would be nothing without them, really. So So I just want to say that's why, especially shorts, they all come in through open submissions, and I wouldn't see them in any other way.
Thank you very much. I also hear you as well about submission fees. It's a very different conversation depending on what territory you're in. And European festival or mainland European festivals, it's very rare for them to charge a lot, but they do get a lot more support from their government or their regional kind of areas. In America, it's very common for a submission fee. Not all of them very big, and some of them are, you know, free for certain categories, but completely kind of agree about submission fees. Leslie or Faridah, how about you in terms of pre-curation? I know actually, Leslie, you mentioned about, you know, a lack of pre-curation, which is quite bold, I think, for a festival that's of your size.
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, we have a reputation, so we do get a lot of submissions, and so we're in a position where we just all the work that we need just comes in that door. Now we do typically have augment the programs, the films and competition programs, with a few special programs, and those would be curated. Those are typically, we'll invite a curator to put a program together, or maybe an arts organization or something like that. And this year for example, we featured a program of work by indigenous filmmakers, indigenous experimental filmmakers. We presented a program of experimental films by trans makers, and we had a BIPOC animation program that was curated by one of our festival alumni, and then we had this great sort of little retrospective of a French video sort of performance artist, and those are curated. Those are a whole kind of separate deal, but they're there to help give a little more context and broaden the conversation with the work that's in competition.
Definitely, yeah, I think that makes sense. You do see a lot of kind of special kind of curated collections that kind of complement or actually are in the lead up to a festival, which I think kind of helps generate a lot more marketing as well. Faridah, what about Athena?
So the shorts are from submissions, and then the features are a combination of submissions and curation, which is the case at a lot of festivals. It tends to be that way for the most part. There'll be some light curation, like if someone saw one short that they just really like somewhere else, they would invite the filmmaker to submit. It's not just like, oh, you automatically get in. It usually tends to be still a committee of voices. They just encourage people to submit for the most part. But yeah, it's a combination of shorts, a combination of submissions and curation.
Fantastic. Again, like really liking the variety up here as well. So the next question is, and this will be interesting for all of your voices in terms of being inside a festival, talking about festivals in general. So this is a question that goes like so: what do you think defines a festival being credible? To put that into context, if a filmmaker doesn't know a festival because they are not a big established name, what should they look for to understand if it's worth the time and the money? It's a big question, I realize, but I think it would be really interesting to hear like 3 perspectives from other festivals as well.
One thing that I encourage people to do when they're asking this question, how do I know which festival to submit to? I think, and people probably already get this, but to really do your research, to not only go to that festival website and read everything you can about it, but if you're actually able to attend, in this day and age, because of pandemic, I've been able to go to a lot of film festivals that I've wanted to, that I just never had. So this would have been a great research year, to get an understanding of what type of work that festival programs. And I think by reading titles, that's certainly one way, but it's really you learn so much just by having seen a couple programs and get a feel or the flavor of that festival and whether your work is a fit or not.
Definitely, I agree. I mean, that's what we spend our day doing, is kind of looking at the lineups, you know, did they have a theme that changed that year? Or, you know, it's research, and I think, you know, there's no short answer for it at all. Sean or Faridah, how about yourselves?
I would, if I could just add also
Yeah,
really
yeah,
quickly, I'm sorry, we get so much high quality work, and we're always trying to find a way to help the filmmakers realize that we're an experimental and avant-garde film festival. And your film may have been extremely well produced, aesthetically beautiful, technically excellent, and so on, but there's nothing experimental or pushing the form in any way. This year we actually we added, when you select your genre, whether it's documentary, narrative, experimental, animation, we actually made those say experimental documentary, experimental narrative, and so on, because we don't want to waste people's time, you know, and you know, we have a limited bandwidth as well, so we're always trying to help the filmmakers see that. But you know, you can only read and understand so much, you know.
Definitely. So Faridah or Sean, how about you?
I'm not sure I can add anything to what Leslie's already said. Yeah, research. Festivals often put their previous programs on websites, not always, but we do on ours anyway, and you can kind of get a sense of what the programming has been like over a specific period of time. And if you are I guess specialty festival or niche festival or community festival, maybe have a look at how many of this of similar kinds of festivals exist in that region. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I'm not sure I have the answer, and I think if I was a filmmaker, I would probably have a better one to give.
Okay, but I still think it's perfectly valid to hear from other festivals, you know, what they strive to do to make themselves look credible and how that can translate. Because I do think that first impressions count, and I think, you know, when you're a filmmaker, choosing where to spend that money is kind of trying to find the time to research and kind of look at that. Faridah, sorry, Sean, go on.
Well, when you said that, it kind of just occurred to me is that you should also submit to festivals that you like the programming of. If you think this festival has put on work that I admire, and I would like to consider these filmmakers my contemporaries. Well, that should be the impetus for you to submit as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Faridah, do you have anything to add?
I feel like the question of credible is like a fun one. There's probably conversations about why the word credible was used. But I think ultimately, what I think for a film festival is it's always just like if a film festival is good for you or good for your film, ultimately. So you're not just researching whether or not the program works for you, but you could also just research to see what filmmakers from that festival, where they've gone, where else they've done with their work. Because as we are here to exhibit films and to showcase these stories, but filmmakers are trying to make a career of this. And hopefully this will not be just your last film. So like, and as people who work at film festivals, we know our space particularly well, but you know your film best and you know what you want from your career best. So like kind of not just research to see whether or not that film festival would like your film, but also figure out whether or not you like the festival, like if it's a festival that actually will serve you. And I feel like that kind of will handle the weird credible elements of things, but also just like, it's meant to be, I guess a puzzle is like the weirdest thing, but it's like, it's supposed to be a match for both. It's not just a match for us because we are exhibiting your work, but it also should be a match for you. Like there's a lot of it's expensive to submit to a lot of film festivals, I'm aware. So like figure out what is actually the best fit and kind of curate that list. Don't just submit to 100 different film festivals and hope you get into some, because that's a really quick way to end your filmmaking career because you have no more money. So try to think of both. Because again, as we've said earlier, the reason why you may not get into a film festival may not even be because you're not a good fit for the film festival. You might be a great fit. It just didn't work slotting wise, or didn't fit with what theme they were going for that particular year. So like be strategic yourself, not just figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel in a way, I mean, you've hit on the word curation again. So if anything, it's like whilst all of you, collectively in your own roles are curating the content, it should also be viewed by the filmmaker about curating where you want to find your audience and where you think your audience is and where you want to actually kind of expand. And what we find with we've got very kind of high mix of international clientele is that they don't always know a territory as well as they think. So we find a lot of UK filmmakers don't necessarily know the hierarchy of US festivals. We find that a lot of US filmmakers don't know anything about Europe. So, trying to find time to do that research and kind of figure out where your film fits, I think is valid. And you're right, the word credible does have some kind of nuances to it. Just know where you're spending your money. That's kind of like a nice kind of way of kind of underlining it. I have another question, which again might be another eye roll moment, but and it is a common one that we get asked a lot, and I feel I know where it stems from, but it would be interesting to hear what you folks think. Is it true that cover letters aren't a thing anymore? Do you read them? I hear my film will be picked on its strengths, but I can't help but feel I need to do more to get my film noticed. I see like slight inhalation of like, okay. So who wants to tackle that first?
Can I just ask you, if is this person, would they be talking about a cover letter on, say, Film Freeway or something?
Yeah, I mean, you used to be able to provide a cover letter on Without Box, and Film Freeway still has that facility. Short Film Depot doesn't, Fest Home doesn't, and there aren't too many other platforms that are still existing. But I think it's possibly kind of linked to Film Freeway.
Yeah, okay. I think it's always good to write something. I mean, it's good to have a little bit of context. I think I'd be a bit. I don't know, if there was nothing written there, I would kind of wonder, was this intentional? But also, if it's incredibly long or something, the work needs to speak for itself, really, and it does speak for itself. So no, I don't think a cover letter will affect your chances, really, but it's always good to maybe have a little bit of background context about who this particular filmmaker is, but only a little bit. Like, again, the work will speak for itself.
How about Leslie? How about you?
I'm primarily looking at the work, but I do notice, if I have a question about this, like what format was this shot in, I will go and look into the specifications about it, and or where is this filmmaker from? I will often look to augment what I've seen on the screen. I'll look to augment that with other information that may be there in Film Freeway. I think it's a slippery slope with that letter because, as Sean said, you don't want it to be too long. It should be informative. But I would say if it's just for the purpose of saying please show my film, that's not very informative. So, but it is an opportunity to bring some additional context or information to the work.
Brilliant. And Faridah?
Maybe my answer's a little different. I watched a film and then I looked to see what other information you submitted, like for just about every film I watch. And it's usually because I'm interested in the film. I see the work and I'm like, cool, I'd like to know a little bit more about who made it, or if they submitted anything. I do not take off points if you do not have a letter. I hate cover letters personally, like in real life, not like in Film Freeway. In Film Freeway, I like reading what people have to say, but like in my actual life, like I see a job description, I'm like, cover letter. But like, but for me, it's, I watch a film and if I'm interested in the film and I want to know a little bit more, I will go and read whatever else you've submitted. So I'm not, it's not like no one's reading it. So if that's what the concern is, which I know is the concern when you have cover letters for other types of jobs, is that no one's actually reading those things. Also, in other jobs, people are actually reading them. They're checking to see whether or not you read the job description. Which is also part of it as well when you're like, I guess, looking at it at a film festival. Like sometimes you'll look at a cover letter, and I work for a lot of festivals like Athena, where it's women in leadership roles, and then the cover letter has none of that. I start to wonder if you knew that you applied to Athena. If it's just the cover letter you sent to everyone, which is fine, but it's not going to help you then, because it's kind of obvious that you're kind of submitting to everyone. So like, only write a cover letter if you have something to say, is kind of my thing. If you don't have anything to add to the film, it doesn't hurt you to not have it. So like, don't make yourself write it. But if there's something you want to share about your experience making the film, or some sort of connection to the festival, or some sort of like context for why you thought the story is really important to tell, then write it. But otherwise, don't do it unless you have something you specifically want to say. Don't do it because you think we're looking for it. Do it because you want to say something.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a mixture of all three for us as a company. We get asked a lot, like, do you write a cover letter, because it can help my film get seen? And we're like, actually, the majority of festival directors or programmers that we know that are kind of dealing with that end of things, will only read a cover letter if they've watched the film and they're interested in the film, and it then leads them to kind of go, have they sent me something else? If it's not in your director's statement as well, because you also have that as a facility to kind of be able to kind of expand on stuff. But then I think, I know that for me, cover letters are a hangover from when we used to have to send physical submission materials, when we had to send a VHS or a DVD in the post, and it was to kind of say, this is the name of my film, this is the return address if you're sending my VHS back. Shows you how old I am. But also kind of like, it was formal because it had to be, because that was the process. Where we've kind of migrated to being digital now, it's not as important, but it's also, I still feel it's a little bit kind of going back to that kind of myth of you've got to know someone to get your film selected, that there's something you can do to make your film stand out in the selection process, which it's the merit of the work, it's the strength of the work, because no one's going to pick your film because you wrote a lovely, endearing cover letter, because that's not what the festival is going to print out and put on every seat, as a previous guest has said on this Filmmaker Lounge. It's the film itself. But it's interesting that it still lingers on, like this idea of a cover note after all this time. Go on ahead, Faridah.
Someone mentioned the director's statement. The director's statement and the cover letter are not the same thing, at least in my brain. So yes, if you have a director's statement, please put something in so we know what you're trying to say with your film, and if it comes across. So like that's important. But the cover letter is like that separate thing that they add at the bottom, again, which I read if it's there, because it's fun to read about people. But it's not the reason I will choose a film.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's agreed. So I've just, somebody has just said, hi, we run a festival, director statements are really helpful for us. So make sure you fill it in. Our advice for any filmmaker is make sure you filled in every kind of area on the submission platform. And it's a real bugbear for us, but fill in your entire cast and crew. Do not just put in the director, writer, producer. You had a lot of team make that film together, so kind of like show them out. It also shows you to be a bit more appreciative and respectful as a filmmaker as well. I do have a question actually, which some of you have tapped into, which is somebody has asked about how would they go about becoming a volunteer screener for a festival near them? How would they go about kind of seeing if they do have kind of an open call for that? So I know, Sean, you said that you don't have volunteers, but do you have volunteer, apart from the wonderful job description that you mentioned earlier, do you have any opportunities for screeners?
I mean, I would love there to be, and there could be. I just think it's I just think everyone who volunteers for to view submissions should be valued for the work they're doing, and because it is time consuming and it can be difficult, and I sometimes feel that volunteers, while great, they themselves often draw the short straw which is like they might not, like, I don't know, they might just not get the support that they need. That said, if you're a volunteer festival and there's kind of a structure of how these things are built into it, and everybody feels like, if it's a volunteer festival where everyone is essentially on the same level, then yeah, I mean, look for those festivals, most definitely. They a lot of them exist. But if, I mean, it'll vary from festival to festival. I would love some volunteers, but then again, I'm paying someone now. So why you know, those people are volunteers and this one person's getting paid? How does that work? Do you know?
Mhm. Leslie, you mentioned something about volunteers earlier, but in terms of people that have been part of the audience or part of the community, so, you know, is that a requirement for somebody to become a volunteer screener?
For us, it is, because we are a very particular type of a festival. So, and I think it just takes coming to a couple programs to really get it. We do have folks who are kind of all over the country, and even a few people in Europe who do volunteer with us for screening. And since the pandemic and everybody learned how to use Zoom, we did all of our salon sessions online, which is, you know, every couple weeks we have an open session with any of our volunteer screeners who want to get together and talk about work, things that they may have watched and are just, you know, don't know how to talk about it, or want to make sure people see it, or, you know, it's a great way. We see ourselves, you know, in the world of avant-garde and experimental film, which can tend to be a little bit cliquish, you know, and insular. We try to be very open and embrace new people. And so I think our screening process reflects that. We also this year kind of grew our process. Well, we had a little pilot program last year that we grew this year, where we work with university professors who work with their students. So we'll have a university professor, we'll assign them a queue of maybe 10 films in round one, and they watch them with their students and discuss them and look at the criteria. And as a group, they get one vote in round one. But that's a way for us to help more people learn about the type of film that we show, and give them a chance to see the behind the scenes and how does the sausage get made. But I would say that, yes, you definitely have to have come to one of our festivals, or, you know, maybe you've been working in experimental film for a long time, and you know, we could give you a pass.
I do think it helps just understanding, you know, not only kind of how a film festival works, but what the audience is expecting as well. Faridah, how about Athena? Is that kind of more of a close, intimate kind of team, or do you have kind of pre-screeners that you can kind of?
There are pre-screeners. So I was new to the role, so I didn't have as much interaction with the screeners this year. So I'm not entirely sure how they were chosen, but at other festivals I've chosen screeners and like found screeners. So it varies. I've been a screener. I've been both a paid screener and a volunteer screener. I mean, to be honest, if there's a specific festival that you want to reach out to, if there's a specific festival that you want to screen for, reach out to the team and ask. Because like everyone has their own kind of policy for how they want screeners to come in or not come in. Each one of them has their process. They'll let you know, or they won't let you know. It's one of those weird little, I don't know what to say, but like every festival kind of does their process so differently that it really is just good to reach out. It helps to have, if you don't know anyone in the organization, it really does help to have like a film background. If you're just a person, and I know this doesn't sound mean, but if you're just a person who likes watching films, but has no demonstrated proof of curation background, you more than likely will not be accepted. But it varies. But like some interests. I say this as a person who, I started off as a screener and I didn't go to film school. And I started off as a person who just liked film and talked about it incessantly. And then I volunteered at different film festivals, met people, discussed my point of view with people, and then like eventually got into screening, and now I program. That path does exist. It's not the easiest path, but that path does exist. So if screening is something you want to do, the first thing you should do is just ask. Because I really think that's the only way to really know, because every festival really does things very differently, especially in that area.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think there's a lot of value to film festivals that kind of are quite reliant on volunteers, even if it's kind of ticket stub ripping and kind of pointing people in the right direction. And I just remember it's quite a nice touch as a visitor as well, when you are an audience member and you see quite a strong community of volunteers, because I know that when I attended Cleveland International, the amount of volunteers that were there were brilliant, and they were so warm and so friendly. But also the one thing I loved about it is they all wore t-shirts from previous editions. So you could see somebody who'd been there like 3 years ago or last year, or it was their first year, because that was the t-shirt they had. And I just thought it was quite endearing to know that, you know, there is a community willing to help as a volunteer, not necessarily always doing it for like, I want to kind of progress in that kind of curation development or become a festival director or are a filmmaker, but they are kind of, you know, someone who loves film, which I think, you know, we need more nice things in the world, basically. So that's good. So we are quickly running out of time. So I'm going to ask you, let's do some quick fire questions. So, and they're quite tricky questions to ask very quick fire. So this could be interesting. Do you provide feedback? Another popular question.
No.
Can you, in a brief sentence, each say why, just so filmmakers can actually understand why that is?
Time crunch. It's too many submissions, and you just don't have the time to send feedback to every single person.
Yeah.
Is that ditto across the board? Perfect. Good. Right. So next, what is the best part of your job?
The audience loving it, and the filmmaker being happy.
Good. Leslie?
Yeah, I would put the nexus at the same place where the filmmaker and the audience meet. You know, the work gets seen, ingested in people's minds, and then if they can have that conversation afterwards, that's great.
Brilliant. Faridah?
My answer is going to seem so selfish. My favorite moment is when I watch a film and it just sears into my soul. It makes you remember why you got into this, because sometimes you get so stressed out and you see that film by an emerging filmmaker and you're just like, yes, this is why I do this. This is lifeblood. Of course, being an audience and hearing the laughing and having a happy filmmaker is all great, but that moment is like, I don't know. It's lovely. It's the oomph.
Again, another t-shirt there. Oomph. It's the oomph. So my last question is going to be this. If you could swap roles with a filmmaker for a day, what do you think they would be most surprised about by your job?
Just how unexciting it is for the majority of the time.
That is a brilliant answer. Leslie?
Well, I was a filmmaker. And I think the thing that surprised me the most when I took on the director role was that I had to change my attitude about sponsorship, because I'm an old punk rocker. So my attitude before was, why would you put a Fiat in the Michigan Theater lobby? And then afterwards, it's like, how much money is that?
Amazing. And Faridah?
Plotting in run times. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, it's the work and it's beautiful. But it's also like, you have limited space in the theater and you need to put things into a thing. It's just slotting seasons, like probably from a person, like it's just wild. It's Post-its on a sheet and you're moving them around. It's Tetris. And I think a lot of filmmakers are just like, it's watching films and then putting the ones you on like. And I'm like, no, it's like literal space and slotting. And I think that would be really surprising, like how much of the job requires actually like just organization and not just the creative. I think that'll be surprising.
Definitely. So I do want to mention, seeing as we are wrapping up rapidly, that Gaze Film Festival is open for submissions at the moment. So if you have any queer films, also kind of international shorts and features, is that correct, Sean? Yeah, perfect. So they are open at the moment. Leslie, you are, I know you've literally just finished, but you are due to open for submissions for Ann Arbor on the, is it July
1st.
July 1st. So any kind of experimental and avant-garde filmmakers, keep an eye out for that. Faridah, you have so many festivals that you're kind of dealing with. Do you have any festivals that you want to shout out that are open for submissions in the minute?
Oh yeah, McGovern Film Festival. We are doing kind of year-round programming. So please submit, and you can, if you're accepted, you can decide what time of year your film would be shown.
Fantastic, brilliant. So it's been so great to have all of you in this discussion. The reason I do these sessions with Film Festival Alliance is we just want filmmakers to understand more about film festivals and the process. And I hope those that have watched have been picking up some good tips and insights. We have kind of seen some love in the chat as well. I just want to say thank you so much to the three of you, because you've been brilliant panelists, and I love kind of hearing all the different perspectives and voices from the different festivals. And I really do treasure your time, talking of time and expertise. So please join me, everyone, in saying thank you to Faridah, Sean and Leslie. So thank you very much.
Thank you for getting us, like, it's nice to talk to other programmers as well sometimes. So thank you for organizing this.
Oh, no worries, our pleasure. I mean, obviously this is part of that journey. So, you know, the next one is marketing and socials. That's the name of the game. So for anyone watching, our next session is going to take place the same time on Thursday, the 6th of May. And our special guest will be Tom Brompton from Polymath PR. We also have Miranda Patton, the Director of Operations from Dead Center Film. And we have Vince Johnson from David Maddell and Associates. Yeah, Faridah's like, yay. Make sure to follow Festival Formula and Film Festival Alliance on all the socials to keep an eye out for information for the next one. But also I do implore you to go and follow socials for all of the festivals that have spoken tonight. Yeah, all that leaves me to say is stay safe, please, wherever you are. Keep talking and always be creative. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.